So in this video, what I thought I would do is I would talk about, or rather I would go over the process of creating a fabric texture, or rather how you go about creating fabric textures so that you can very easily create samples that are very reliable and not what you generally get on the internet. Now, generally on the internet, if if you've ever downloaded any kind of fabric textures, you'll notice there's always kind of some sort of wrinkles in them, and there's usually some sort of shading and stuff like that. So usually texture samples that you find on the internet are just unreliable to be used, for anything useful really. So what I'm going to do first of all is usually, I guess it depends on the kind of fabric that we're working on, but usually there's some sort of pattern. Now, what I will do first is I'm going to be creating a sort of like a denim pattern that's used in jeans. So I'm going to go ahead and just go to Sketch or Filter, Sketch, and then Halftone Pattern. And you're going to notice these kind of dots if you use the setting of 1 and 2 for size 1, contrast 2, and pattern type dot. I could choose line or anything like that, but for the most part I just want dot. Now that we have this, you'll notice that, at first, especially since I created a 2000 by 2000 resolution image, it will scale down, and at 33% it looks like this. Not exactly what we want, but that's only because it's just being displayed that way. It doesn't mean that it's not. It is actually that way. Now, the reason why I chose 1 for this dots and contrast of, what I did is because what I want is that when I zoom in into this image now, I want to make sure that they are, these dots are sort of faded into each other. They're not perfect squares of black and white. Just going to zoom out again. Now what I need is I need some sort of noise to this pattern. So because right now it's too even, and I don't really like that. So I'm going to go ahead and just add noise, and I'm going to raise that amount slightly to, I don't know, 16% or something like that. I don't want anything like this. This is just too noisy. I want to still see my grid-like image. Gaussian uniform. You know what? I'm just going to use Gaussian for now. Like that. And choose whatever percentage suits you. And I'm going to click OK. Now that I have that, I'm going to go ahead and just go back into Filter, go to Blur, Motion Blur. And if you've noticed, these dots, the way they were distributed was at a very 45-degree angle. And what I mean by that is all the black dots were, for example, aligned at a 45-degree angle, and same thing with the white dots. So angle 45 will do, and distance for motion blur of 3 will do. Now you can lower the amounts to 1 or 2, or even go down to 4, but for the most part I just want distance 3. Now you'll notice that ever since we did the motion blur, now we have all the lines like we had before, but the nice thing about this now is that now this is, somewhat varied. It's not, these lines aren't perfectly straight. So that's exactly what we wanted. So next up, let's fill this in with some sort of color. I'm going to go ahead and just go to create new layer. I'm going to pick a color, whatever. Something grayish, just with a small tint of blue. And of course, you want to be using the paint bucket tool. And of course, right now, I made the mistake of working in grayscale. So if I go back to image, mode, and RGB, and I won't flatten this because I want to keep both my layers, and paint this again, now I get my color. And what I want to do is I want to overlay this layer with some color. So I'm just going to go into the blend modes and select whichever one here. Now the nice thing about Windows is that once you select any one of these layers, you can just use the scroller to scroll through any of the blend modes. At the same time, you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard. So pick whichever blend mode suits you. I think I'm going to stay with multiply. And then you can just, easily fade in, fade out, do whatever. Now, I'm going to zoom out for a second here. And this fabric actually looks pretty good. The one thing that's missing, though, is there's really not enough variation in this fabric. So now what I'll do is I'm going to create a new layer altogether. I'm going to fill it in with, anything, it really doesn't matter. Any kind of color. Go to filter, render, fibers. And I guess these settings will do for now. And I'm going to create another one. Do the same thing. Filter, render, fibers. And this time I'm going to choose a slightly different setting. And the reason why I want to do that is because I just want streaks that I can use to, well, you'll see. I'm going to go to blend my layers now and make sure my fill is set to something more subtle. And all I'm really looking for is I'm just looking for streaks that will be running across this texture. And I might actually need to increase the opacity here. And now you're going to see a bunch of streaks going down this texture, and that's pretty much what I want. Now let's play with this layer here. So turn it on. Of course, lower the fill rate, or just fill. Choose whichever blend mode that suits you. Now for this one, I'm just actually going to keep it fairly subtle. All I want is I just wanted to really break up this denim fabric here. So we have something like this with all the streaks, with all the, Okay, I like this. So now that we've created a denim texture or denim-like texture, now it's not exactly perfect, but from far away, you really can't notice any more detail in your fabrics. So this is as far as I want to go with this one in particular. Now, let's create another one, another fabric base. And the reason why I'm creating these fabric bases, by the way, is just because, again, I will be using this as a base for my textures that I will be creating a little bit later on the fabric for my character. I will be then doing things like drawing pockets and, whatever, stitching, anything like that. But at the very least, I have a very good or very strong base to start with. So this will serve as, the background color for everything else that I build up from there. So let's create one for example, his shirt. So let's create a new document. So 2000 by 2000. Now again, I'm just going through the process of showing you how to do this. I will be, however, recreating all this. I'll already have a few fabric textures arranged, but for the most part, I'm just showing you how how I do these things. So that's fine. And always remember that when you're creating a new document, create an 8-bit and not 16-bit. And the reason why for that is because if you go to filters and then you go to sketch, this will actually be turned off for 16-bit. So let's go back into sketch halftone. And let's once again create this here. Zoom into 50% so we can see the pattern more clearly. And you know what? I'm actually going to zoom to 100% just because I want to see the details here. Going to add noise. I guess something like that will be fine. Once again, go into blur, motion blur. And this time I'm going to go a little bit further to 4. And the reason why I wanted to go to 4 this time is because now you'll notice is it almost seems as if there's two fabrics over each other. Now this isn't perfect yet. What I'm going to do now is I'm just still going to double click on this layer until unlock it, right click and duplicate it. So now I have 2 layers. And the second layer I'm just going to rotate by 90 degrees. So edit. And you could go to transform rotate or just free transform. Either one will work. So rotate and choose a degree here of 45. Actually not 45 but 90. And now this pattern is going the other way. So what we do now is we lower the opacity of this one here. And go into a different blend mode. And now you'll notice much more clearly that what we're getting is I guess it depends on which blend mode you go as well. But what we want is we want almost like a crosshatch pattern. Oh, I saw something here. And not quite a grid like that. Let's keep looking for the blend mode that I'm looking for. No, it's too much. Now, if this isn't working for any reason, what you could do is you could just go ahead and redo this. So let's go ahead and just create a new one. Now, I'm not going to necessarily dump this. I could always reuse this for something else. Let's redo this. And this time I'm going to still do the same, like a similar process where I go to Sketch, Halftone Pattern. And this time I'm just going to use Line. Zoom into 50% until I see my lines, actually maybe even 100%. Well, not 3200 by 100. Okay, so we have something like this. Now what you could do is, once again, just unlock this. Go ahead and duplicate this layer. Transform, rotate. So edit, transform, rotate. Change the angle by 90 degrees. And fade it out until you get something like that. So if we zoom in a little bit further, you'll notice that there is now 2 layers to this. One, which is the threads that are running on top, and the ones on bottom that are slightly more faded out. But you know what? Let's go ahead and just look for a blend mode that's going to make it appear more so like that. And now, as you can see, you can much more clearly see the thread on the top and on the bottom. If I, of course, increase the intensity, it's going to give me a kind of like a pattern like that. But what I'm looking for is something like this. Now, once this is done, just go ahead and just merge these layers together. So you can either press Control E, or you can go to Layer, Merge Down, which of course you can see is Control E. And now, finally, I can go ahead and just noise this up. Now, if we wanted to do this a little bit better, what we could have done is we could have done this before merging the layers. So you know what? Let's see what the result we'll get before if we do the noise operation to both these separately. The one nice thing about this is that if we keep it separate, we can always add noise. For example, I could increase the amount to God knows what, you know, whatever number we want to the top and bottom layer, and we could completely keep it separate. 2 very different values. So once again, just merge this together. And now, of course, what we do is we go ahead and just use Filter, Blur Gaussian. And we don't want to use anything too big, just, you know, just enough to kind of smoothen out this texture overall. If we go down to 50%, you'll notice that our pattern is looking like this right now. So let's go ahead and create a new layer, and let's fill it in with some color. So let's pretend that it's the mouse's shirt here that we are working on. And I'll pick the orange that I had previously. And once again, my mode, image mode, is grayscale. So let's change it to RGB, don't merge. Fill it in. And in the layer tab, choose one of the blend modes, and there you go. We got yet another base for our fabric. And yeah, just keep, play around with the blend modes, whichever one you like. I'm just going to go ahead and just choose multiply. Now the nice thing, of course, is that I don't need to always just look for a color, paint bucket this thing in. There's other ways. Of course, I could just make sure that my layer is selected here. Go into adjustments, hue saturation here. And of course now I can very easily change the saturation to whatever it is I want. Make it desaturated or more saturated, and of course make it darker. So this gives me a lot of flexibility in how I can affect this layer right here. Regardless of what color it is right now, I could very easily adjust it to any kind of shade I want. So if we go back and just look at our, what we've done so far, and I'm just going to, I guess I could just close this one here. We have something like this, and we have something like this. Two very different kinds of fabric textures. This one here, and if I zoom in to this, that there. Now we can use these as our fabrics that we can, just use for whatever purpose we need. And I guess for this one, depending on what kind of fabric this is, one thing that you might want to do is you might want to, if you go to the bottom layer, if it's kind of like a t-shirt material, you might want to, lower the blacks in here. You might want to make the color a little bit more uniform. So just go ahead and go into levels. So image, adjustment, levels, and just adjust the color until you get something, I don't know, maybe like this. So let's zoom out. And that's looking a little bit better. You know what? I'm just going to go into filter once again, go into motion blur. And this time I'm just going to go down to 0. And I don't want distance of 4, maybe a distance of 2. I just want to smooth it out a little bit more. And of course, I don't know, I guess I could always just rotate this layer however I want and tile it. But anyways, for the most part, this is how I go about making my texture bases. In the next tutorial, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over how to create details. So things like stitching and creating pockets and, just different layers for your materials. And then once, of course, I do that, I'm going to then go back into my character. I'm going to work up some other stuff, some other details that we might need. Cheers.